I'm here to talk a bit about Web3 and our primary project today, which is Polkadot. So what is Web3? Web3 is Gavin Wood's vision for a serverless, decentralized internet, where users have greater control over their privacy, their identity, their financial accounts, and ultimately their freedom online, where decentralized peer-to-peer networks are accelerated through trustless incentivization. And why do we call it Web3? We call it Web3 because it's the third major evolution of the internet. We had Web 1, which was static websites, really poor UI UX. Monetization was via click advertising model. Then we evolved into Web 2. Web 2 brought social and mobile. It brought more user-generated content and interactivity on the web. However, monetization evolved from just static advertising through to what we call now surveillance capitalism, where a small group of companies are able to follow what you do online and then target ads to you as a result. And so we've had major issues with privacy, consolidation of wealth and power online, and essentially a cartelization of the internet as we know it. And now we're moving into Web3, where decentralized applications will be built and communicate with one another on WebAssembly virtual machines. Monetization can be built directly in at the protocol layer. Users have better control of their privacy, of their data, of their finances, so on and so forth. And then we will have a greater distribution of power and wealth online. And we're even starting to see this. The Gini coefficient in many cryptocurrencies today, like Ethereum and Bitcoin, while acceptably high, is actually lower than what we've seen in Web 2 and lower than what we see in the internet at large. And so we have data points that at least we're going in the right direction. So why does this matter? Web3 matters because Web 2 has failed us. A small cartel of companies, the FANGs and a few others, control more than 80% of cloud storage, more than 90% of cloud compute, nearly 100% of all of our online data, and they commercialize it as they see fit, without including you in the process. Many people that I talk to in working in Web3 are passionate about being able to maximize user privacy. And I, for one, am very excited about that goal, but I personally would just prefer to be able to participate in the business model of commercializing my data. I don't have a problem with trustlessly sharing some data as I see fit, as long as I can participate in that model. And Web3 allows for either that individual that doesn't want to share any data whatsoever, and they can control that to the maximum they see fit, or someone who's a little bit more like me and doesn't have a problem sharing some data as long as they can participate in that business model. And with these new business models that pop up, we could see the evolution of the first best attempt at universal basic income. So the Web3 Foundation was created and really founded on this idea of we should have less trust and more truth. That we shouldn't have to trust that online conglomerates are not going to be evil, or they will take it upon themselves not to act evil. It should be such that they can't be evil, that the protocols and rules set up allow for users to control their data and participate in the economies online. So enter the Web3 Foundation. Here at the Web3 Foundation, we believe we can create borderless public goods commons. These are often peer-to-peer networks that drive some specific resource and behavior between decentralized actors. That transparent representation and the evolution of the network through coherent governance is a noble pursuit. We are of the opinion that governance, on-chain governance, is a noble pursuit in and of itself, and we stand squarely in the camp of very pro on-chain governance. We also believe that we need more safe spaces for experimentation. For better or for worse, and mostly because markets are leading indicators, the value of certain crypto networks have outstripped their actual technical evolution. And we need to be able to section off certain experiments, perform these experiments in the live with some kind of real financial stake in play without, say, putting a billion-dollar or multi-billion-dollar network at risk. And so to be able to create these safe spaces for experimentation is very important as we continue to evolve this technology going forward. And then finally, we're all very excited about just sound crypto economic design. That when a peer-to-peer network leverages a sound crypto economic design, it accelerates the provision of resources and specific valuable behaviors. And that obviously accelerates network effects and can be very valuable to many people around the world. So enter Polkadot, which is the sort of major undertaking of the Web3 as of today. Polkadot is interoperability infrastructure for Web3. Polkadot sits at the center of Web3, allowing for different protocols and blockchains to be able to communicate with one another. It's an incredibly technically ambitious project that brings a number of novel innovations together, which Rob will talk about some at the consensus mechanism, but basically allows for parallelized security, arbitrary interaction between smart contracts. So say an Ethereum smart contract can call a Tezos smart contract, and a Definity smart contract can send a transaction on the Zcash network, and so on and so forth. As I mentioned, Rob will get into consensus. We use also a very interesting native governance mechanism, which I'll talk a little bit about, and then it's led by Parity. Genuinely one of the strongest teams in our industry. So quick overview, a relay chain, which is sort of the main sort of communication layer, connects with different parachains. Different parachains deploy natively on this relay chain. Either if they've been built in Substrate, they can deploy natively and have the best performance, or if there's a legacy technology, they can connect via a bridge, and we expect, say, for Ethereum to connect via a bridge. And so for me, as an investor in this space, what got me so excited about Polkadot were a series of just what I call aha moments, where I recognize that this is a really important step forward and in a very, very important time. And the first one was this idea of arbitrary cross-chain messaging. What sets Polkadot apart is that it allows for these novel interactions between different chains. It's not just limited to, say, the transfer of tokens or the transfer of value cross-chain. As I mentioned, any smart contract can call any other smart contract on a different chain, and we expect that this creates new possibilities, opens up novel use cases for chains to interact with one another. And this allows for asynchronous messaging, where two chains that maybe don't speak or don't finalize in the same order or at the same speed can speak with one another. So today we got a bit of an error on that visual, but in a synchronous system, say like Ethereum today, the sender and receiver, when they message one another, they must also finalize at the same time. So they have to use the same consensus mechanism. Whereas in Polkadot, the sender and receiver can finalize at a different period of time. And let's say it's a proof of work that finalizes in 10 minutes versus a proof of stake which finalizes in 10 seconds or something like that. They'll be able to speak with one another without the proof of work chain reverting the proof of stake chain, or the proof of stake chain front running the proof of work chain. And this is really one of the key innovations here, is that we allow for chains that have their own novel consensus mechanism and finalize in their own way at their own time to be able to communicate with other chains that have a set of design decisions that are different. The second sort of very big aha moment for me was this concept of pooled security. That as a parachain, you can offload your security to the relay chain and thereby drop the cost of security by an order of magnitude. If you run a layer 1 chain today, via inflation, you're probably paying somewhere in the millions of dollars a year for your network security. Or in the case of Ethereum, it's hundreds of millions of dollars a year. In the case of Bitcoin, it's actually into the billions of dollars a year for security. Now, a number of chains can come together, share those resources, pool those resources, and drop their cost of security by an order of magnitude or more. And that's going to be incredibly powerful as we move towards an era of more competition among chains. You're not going to just be able to burn millions of dollars a year for transaction confirmations across your network. You will need to seek the most competitive solution to do so. And this, I believe, is a very compelling opportunity. So then from there, we moved into this paradigm shift that we've seen across the industry. And I've been seeing this as an investor for probably on the order of 2 years now, where the most talented, most mature teams started to migrate away from this idea that they could just layer on abstractions on top of a layer 1 and then be able to build their application that has a seamless user experience. In reality, the top teams are wanting to control their design space from the ground up, from that layer 1 up, all the way to be able to build specifically for their users and their use case. So let's say you run a decentralized application, which is high-frequency trading. Very frankly, you're not going to be able to build that on certain consensus mechanisms, even if you layer on all this layer 2 and layer 3 abstraction and try to do away with the design decisions of that original layer 1. You inevitably need to have a consensus mechanism that is maybe near instant finality. So you should be able to plug and play a DAG or a PBFT or something like that. And you should be able to have, make these design decisions for yourself and create a blockchain that is application specific and for your users and your use case. And this is important as we move towards an era of more user-centric design in blockchain, that we can make these design decisions, but then interact seamlessly with other blockchains and communicate, so on and so forth. So Substrate allows us to do this, and Bjorn, I thought, encapsulated this very well, so I won't spend too much time on this. But basically, in a WebAssembly blog, you can plug and play a whole bunch of design decisions yourself, and these come directly out of the box. Think of Substrate like a blockchain in a box. And when you're designing using Substrate and thinking about deploying on Polkadot, naturally you will go through this sort of fork in the road of, do I need to be my own parachain, or do I need to be a smart contract that deploys on another parachain? And there are a set of decisions that you'll need to make, and each sort of developer will go through this process. And far more developers will arrive at the conclusion that they can be a smart contract that deploys on an existing chain like Substrate instead of having to spin up their own parachain, because again, being your own chain, whether your own standalone layer 1 or even a parachain, will have running costs and will have a certain technical complexity that goes beyond just deploying a simple smart contract on a different chain. And so some interesting things that you get with Substrate. I'm not going to go through all of these, but sort of in that concept of a blockchain in a box, and what do I get natively out of that box? So a few things that are good to highlight. Light clients. So I would have thought that we would have got light clients solved by now across the space, and very fortunately, with the launch of Polkadot, you'll be able to have light clients out of the box with your app or with your chain. Pervasive secure networking, that is a very important one. I think we'll see networking becoming more of a scalability issue as we move forward, and the team at Parity has done some wonderful work with Substrate in that regard. So the last thing that for me was a big kind of aha moment with respect to Polkadot is the crypto governance. And some key ingredients, so there's referendum where token holders vote on measures. However, there's a council that is subject to rotating approval voting that sort of handle a lot of the day-to-day measures, and they can quickly propose things for referendum, for voting. There's some really interesting security mechanisms like adaptive quorum biasing and time lock voting, which I'll quickly explain. Delayed autonomous enactment is another one. And then there's a treasury DAO inherent in Polkadot, where a certain percentage of the block reward goes into this DAO, and this DAO then doles out rewards on the network in order to pay for application layer developers and protocol layer developers, and even community management and all the other things that you need to have a vibrant community. And so we'll see how crypto governance accelerates that. So very quickly, you've got dot holders. Dot holders can vote on council members via approval voting, and then dot holders vote on all of the tabled motions. If the council tables a motion, then it goes through one set of parameters for voting. If dot holders table a public motion, other dot holders can sponsor that. Think of it in like a staking version of a Reddit upvote, downvote mechanism. And then those measures get tabled for voting more quickly. We use something called adaptive quorum biasing in order to make decisions and allow the network to evolve. If we move back a step here, one of the major problems that we've had in crypto governance up to today has been achieving minimum quorum on even very obvious measures. The great example that I like to use is the case of the DAO. I was a big fan of the DAO and participating very actively in that community. However, we didn't vote on, or not enough of us voted on, a very obvious measure that should have gone through, which was the moratorium. And then a few days later, the DAO blew up because it should have been put into moratorium. It was kind of this like Brexit situation where we all went to bed that night being like, oh, somebody else will vote for this because it's so obvious that clearly it'll go through. And then it didn't meet minimum quorum, and the rest is sort of history, so to speak. So we need a way that even if there isn't great turnout, a decision can reasonably be made, and the protocol or project can evolve. And adaptive quorum biasing allows for this. So basically, the lower the turnout, the more that you need the yays over the nays to carry a vote. So if you have 25% turnout, you need about 2/3 of yays to carry a vote if it's a publicly proposed item. If it's proposed by the council and 25% turnout, you need at least 1/3 to vote in favor in order to carry the vote. And then obviously as you move towards higher turnout, the trend converges around 50 or 50 plus 1, I should say. And so this allows us to adjust the quorum necessary depending on whether it's been tabled by the council, which we understand to be coherent, or whether it's been tabled by a community member, which may or may not be sort of good for the system at large. And then given turnout, you have a different level of quorum. And this, again, allows us to evolve the system independent of the turnout or independent of how things have been tabled. So time lock voting is another interesting security mechanism, and this is sort of a mitigating factor to the whole plutocracy argument of, well, just the people with the most tokens win every vote. So the best way to explain this is just a quick example. Alice, Bob, Charlie. Alice only has 1 dot, but cares a lot about this measure, and so locks her dots for 8 weeks. Bob has 3 dots, also cares a fair amount about this measure, so locks his dots for 6 weeks. Charlie doesn't really care and only locks his dots for 2 weeks. So in this case, Bob voting yes and the other 2 voting no, Bob carries the vote because he sort of had the heaviest mix of dot allocation and caring about it, and so willing to lock himself into the system should he win the vote. In an alternative example where Alice and Charlie vote the same, but Bob doesn't care as much and he only locks his dots for 4 weeks instead of 6 weeks, Alice and Charlie carry the vote. Now, what's important here is, in this case, Alice and Charlie are locked into the system for that period of time, 8 weeks and 2 weeks respectively, while Bob, if he thinks that this vote is catastrophic, he can leave the system. So what this does is that this sort of makes you put your money where your mouth is, but makes you lock yourself into the system if your vote wins, and thusly we create some mitigation on just the rich win out. So an interesting security mechanism here. Then the last sort of thing that I would mention that we're very excited about is with respect to timeline. So we expect the project to launch, Polkadot v1, to launch somewhere around the end of this year. Obviously, this is very vanguard technology. And industry is constantly prone to delays. To my knowledge, most layer 1s have launched way behind schedule. This project remains on schedule, which makes it the only one in to my knowledge, in the history of our industry to be that case. However, so what's exciting here is we're going to be able to play around with this stuff now, right? We don't have to wait for years on end to play around with fast consensus plus crypto governance, plus cross-chain communication and things like that. This is coming likely near the end of this year, and if not, shortly into the first few months of next year. And again, this is enabled because of the talented team behind this project. Parity has a long history of shipping and innovating, and we're very confident in not only the Parity team, but the other teams building important implementations, tools, and other protocols on this network. So, some cool things being built in the Polkadot ecosystem. Bjorn talked a little bit about Edgeware, and Edgeware will have some announcements later this week, but this is a project that everybody should really be following. So this is a permissionless smart contract platform where you can inexpensively interact with Polkadot. Again, emphasis on permissionless smart contract platform. So you'll be able to deploy whatever smart contract that you want on this network and be able to deploy and effectively run that on Polkadot. It's using, to my knowledge, the fairest token distribution that I have seen. So we use an ETH lock drop. You can lock your ETH for 3, 6, or 12 months. And then you get edge tokens independent of what happens. You get your ETH back over a period of time. And so this allows you to, at a very low opportunity cost, play around with this new network. And then Edgeware will be the first to test some of these novel mechanisms that we'll also eventually incorporate into Polkadot, such as a treasury DAO. So in Edgeware, 50% of the block reward will go into a DAO, will be voted on by the token holders and doled out in rewards. And this is in recognition that it's not just transaction validation that is valuable to a network. It's many other constituents and many other activities and behaviors that are important to drive a thriving ecosystem. So this DAO will pay for app layer developers and wallets and infrastructure protocol layer developers, and will pay for participation in governance. We want people participating in governance on Edgeware. It will pay for network validation as well, but also community management and many things, because we recognize that it takes more than just mining to make a community. And so the idea behind this Treasury DAO is that we incentivize crypto governance to coherently dole out rewards on a network over the long term. And we're very excited about that experiment. It obviously leverages all of the best-in-class technology that Bjorn talked about with Substrate, and then obviously very fast yet secure consensus on Polkadot. There are a number of other collaborations that we're very excited about. So ChainSafe is a really talented team out of Toronto building Golang implementation. We've got Aragon building DAOs. libp2p, which is from our close friends at Protocol Labs, is used for the library layer. ChainX in China, a DAG out of Eastern Europe called Blink. There are more than 24 projects today building on top of Polkadot, and we're very grateful for that. I would be remiss in mentioning our grants not mentioning our grants program. So we have doled a little under $1 million just this year in grants, and I would encourage you all to reach out and get involved. We've got a wish list on our grants webpage. Just search for Web3 grants on GitHub, and we're looking for everything from IDEs to simulators, more work in high privacy messaging, novel smart contract scripting. I personally am pretty excited about where assembly script is going. We need more wallets and explorers, validation clients. I want a one-click client for nomination, or for nominators to be able to nominate validators. We also offer grants for community building, holding events, general communications around Polkadot. So please reach out, get involved. We've got an amazing global community and are looking to grow that further. And then one thing I would like to announce here is that we will have the Web3 Summit on the 19th to the 21st. This is an amazing group of builders and leaders, not just in the blockchain and crypto space, but web privacy and Creative Commons and bringing people from around the Web3 concept together. Last year's event was truly remarkable. It was really my favorite. I was not involved with the planning, but it was really my favorite event of the year. It's in a really great venue at the Funkhaus in Berlin. And so if you're looking for something new and unique and very different from most of sort of the crypto events or blockchain events that you see out there, do check out the Web3 Summit. We will have announcements of some really exciting speakers in the coming weeks, so stay tuned for that. And then we are hiring, we're expanding our community, we're looking to grow our reach in a number of different ways, so please reach out, get involved. You can find me, you can find my colleagues here all week. But this is an incredibly exciting community. We are really grateful for all of the contributions that we've had from all around the world, and just really stoked for all the growth to come. So thank you. If I have time for one or two questions, but sure.
No time.
So someone just asked about the adaptive core unbiasing. So just to be clear, the curves that I showed here are purely illustrative. Adaptive core unbiasing is going through just a very thorough research review, and I would expect that the curves change over time. And then more importantly, I would expect that the governance mechanism continues to evolve those curves over time. So that was a very simplified example to show this idea of, we need to come to a conclusion whether 5% or 50% show up for a vote. But how we do that, what that curve should look like, again, there's a great team working on it right now, and there's lots of confidence. But I'm even more confident of when it's put out to an open community, and we can use governance within that community to have a debate, evolve that debate, but then make a decision and move on. And I think once it's in the hands of the community, you'll get probably the most elegant curve that we'll see. And I'm excited to see the results there. But very good question.
So you mentioned in the grant about economic simulator. Can you elaborate on what exactly you're looking for?
Sure. So there are a number of companies out there who are trying to either formalize or standardize the process of smart contract security audits or crypto economic simulations. And we think that somebody could create, it's difficult because it's sort of a basis quite often, but we do think that certain tools could be made that could allow people to simulate kind of crypto economic interactions either between different chains or between chains and Polkadot, or just the crypto economic simulations or interactions between different actors on Polkadot, such as validators and nominators and collators and other nodes. And so to the extent that can be kind of productized, I think that's interesting, and we'd be very interested in supporting that. So, thanks. Okay, I think we're good anyways. Cheers. Thanks.